DeShaun Foster's got his three pillars for excellence. Well, so far for fall camp, it's bumps, bruises, and battles.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for your support. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. All right, we're talking UCLA football. This podcast, your team every day. Welcome back, everydayers. We're talking about fall camp, all right? Bumps, bruises, and battles. What does that even mean? Well, UCLA hasn't escaped the injury bug. They haven't escaped the eligibility bug, and they've certainly seen their first-year head coach, first-time head coach, know how to mess with the media a little bit. DeShaun Foster. No, we're not talking we're in LA. We're talking everybody's in a position battle for starting reps. And not that Eric Bieniemy and Akaika Malloy wouldn't agree. I just doubt that they all are, but let's revisit what could be a big-time battle for a key starting position for this year's UCLA team. All right, one of the things DeShaun Foster recently said to the media was these are key spots, key positions who are in battles for starting positions. All right, if you roll your eyes when you hear this, when you're watching this, I probably had the same reaction to some of them. This is what DeShaun Foster had to say when asked by the media post-practice, pre-practice, in his media availability. This is what he said position-wise are in battles. Running back is one, quarterback is one, corner, linebacker, receiver, tight end, O-line, and then when corrected, right guard, yes, right guard. When he specifically came out the other day and said right guard, Alani Machiavelli, he didn't say that specifically, but said right guard, yes, is still a position of contention. And when he comes out and says it, a little more credibility. But UCLA, with an offensive line that needs to be a bit more solidified, must find ways to find some overall solidarity on the line with the starting unit. Although the UNLV transfer probably expected to be the guy in that spot if he can earn it by the time UCLA plays Hawaii on August 31st. Now, when you look at some of these other battles, all right, they've got 30 billion running backs, but you look at an Eric Bieniemy offense between the mixtures of two tight ends, going five wide, RPOs, you're going to see some fullbacks. So as much as you have running backs in the foray, you see the Burgers coming over from Michigan State. You see all the guys coming over at the ends of the transfer report, not at the end of the window, but at the end of the offseason, heading into literal preseason practice. You're going to have a bunch of running backs that give UCLA depth, but most importantly, provide UCLA with different options to play at fullback and maybe a couple of special teamers. Not really sure if that's how they're going to go with it, but UCLA, it's going to be TJ Harden and Keegan Jones. And I would assume that Eric Bieniemy is going to use Keegan Jones a lot better than Chip Kelly did. Remember, Keegan Jones put on some spin cycle moves, some Madden moves in his 2-touchdown game against Washington State when the Bruins upset a then top 25 Cougar team at the Rose Bowl on a hot, sweltering fall day in Pasadena. And then Keegan Jones eventually went to the portal, got convinced to come back after literally committing somewhere else, came back to UCLA, will finish out his career as a Bruin. And then we can't forget how TJ Harden closed the year, led the team in touchdowns, and really dominated a poor USC defense that could not defend the run or just about anything last year. I think TJ Harden is absolutely clear far and away the runaway lead back with Keegan Jones, different skill set. They should be very compatible with splitting reps in various roles over the season. Now, running back, they're going to have the depth. They have the depth this year. You would think with 3 former/current running back coaches, you would have depth at a skill position of need in a very physical Big Ten conference. Now, I look at quarterback. That's interesting, right? That DeShaun Foster would mention that. Ethan Garbers has been tabbed as QB1 ever since he took the role back from Dante Moore late in the season, 23. even coming in relief in the LA Bowl game to win the bowl game for UCLA over Boise State, basically playing as perfect as he could, sending off the Bruins seniors and those NFL draft picks off on a swan song victory with, a lot of jubilation, and really crowned him as the starting QB heading into 24. Sent Dante Moore packing practically with that big victory. Not that Dante couldn't have stayed. It was a lot of the mixture of the spots and the coaching, but we'd expect Ethan Garbers to be QB1. Now, when pressed, DeShaun Foster did say it's Justin Martin, and there's 9 guys in the room. Mick, you remember UCLA brought in 3 freshman quarterbacks. Bieniemy even talked about him the other day. Let's be real. They're not going to challenge. You've got Madden next year. No freshman quarterback this year is going to challenge Ethan Garbers unless something goes very, very wrong in the understanding and the implementation of the very complicated Eric Bieniemy offense. Don't think that's the case. Garbers has been around. He's learned different offensive sets. He's been around. Bieniemy even said, hey, he's been leading guys during summer with installs. I'd be shocked if any of the youngsters are anywhere near. Justin Martin, though, has been around. A little bit of a raw product when he came in last year against North Carolina Central. But if he's made some strides, made some developments, he could certainly and should be the clear backup to Ethan Garbers. While maybe if for some reason something goes awry this year, could be a capable starter. Now, I have my question marks about him truly challenging for the starting role. But if there is some challenging, then that would mean I would hope a lot more for Justin Martin than it does for Ethan Garbers. But at this point, I just don't see that any way that where Ethan Garbers is challenged, other than DeShaun Foster's learned from his predecessor, Chip Kelly, learned from, all the other coaches. We're going to be a little coy and just kind of throw some curveballs as much as he's been chummy with all the media reporters and the questions, trying to get everybody, hey, on our favor, we're in LA, but I'm not going to give you everything. Open practice for fall camp, but we're not going to show all the plays. All right. Little give and take and just to mess around. That's a little slowly learning the savviness of being a media savvy head coach. Now you move into the bumps and bruises part. What is that exactly? Does that mean for UCLA? Well, bumps, bruises. All right. A bump along the road. You got a redshirt freshman whose eligibility is in question, was even brought up to DeShaun Foster, which was Monet Malafu's status, right? This is a guy that did not play in his true freshman year in 23, 6'1", 230-pounder as a redshirt freshman linebacker. As much as we love Madrano, Oladejo, you're going to need a lot more depth on defense in a year where you're changing defensive coordinators, travel, everything. You're going to want some depth, especially if you're going to need some different situations. A 3-star recruit out of Hawaii. Would love maybe some playing time for him in the Hawaii game. But currently, it's not exactly clear if it's academics and other reason. It was really an unanswered question by DeShaun Foster, but the worry was there for a kid on the roster that we're wondering about his eligibility. So Monet Malafu, a second-year player on the UCLA roster, first year in terms of able to use his eligibility. We'll see if he's even eligible for the first game. And then we look at injuries. Got Gary Smith, the defensive lineman. You would hope that UCLA would have some depth and no injury concerns on the D-line. But with Gary Smith sitting there injured, it wasn't clear how soon he is ready to go when it comes to long-term injuries from spring camp. And then you've got Deshaun Morrell, who was literally just coming off a surgery that DeShaun Foster said, hey, this kid had surgery, fixing the scar tissue in his knee. Those are a couple of guys that could be out a little bit longer. I wonder how long before Smith comes back and how long before Morrell comes back. That was a guy maybe hopefully challenging for a running back spot. I know there's Anthony Adkins who can rotate maybe between a big bowling ball type back / a fullback coming over from, a service academy type triple option offense into a physical front for UCLA. But then you got Morrell, who would have been fun, a youngster, was almost not even the roster at certain points last year, but now is, you would hope after injury could come back and compete later on in this 24 campaign. All right. Bumps, bruises, and battles. Running backs look set. Quarterback looks set. The defense, it's going to be a competition even with the starters all year long. And then you're going to have offensive line, which must be a competition in order for UCLA to score points, because they're going to have to score points to win this game. Obviously, if they're going to have any success, get 6-7 wins this year, offense must be a key point in the understanding of the Eric Bieniemy offense. Bumps, bruises, and battles. Next, let's talk about Brandon Williams. Is he redshirting? Is he going to get a key role? I know Devin Williams might redshirt, but what's the other Williams going to do here on Locked On UCLA? Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier with prices that actually go down closer to first pitch. All right, you can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for concerts, sports, comedy, theater, anything. You know, as an Angelino, I do that as well. I'm sitting there, I want to see that price go down, go down, go down. Boom, snag it, get there. And then you want to know where you're sitting and see how you can look at it. All right, seat views, panoramic views from your seat when you're looking on the Gametime app. In addition, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. All that takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, use the code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, cruising on here in the second segment for Locked On UCLA. We're talking the likes of Brandon Williams. What is his role going to look like in a reduced capacity, as it's highly expected to be for Mick Cronin's highly prized commit from the state of New York heading into the class of 23? And he actually provided some good minutes in the 23-24 campaign for UCLA last year. Now, he couldn't save the shortcomings for almost the entire roster, but I think there is some bright opportunity. And there was some thought maybe that Pitino could steal him back to St. John's. Maybe that some New York school or some East Coast school could bring him back home. And with all the talent, 6 transfers, 2 freshmen, you're adding so much compacted talent with limited playing time all around to distribute. Where is this kid going to go? Well, Mick Cronin hasn't exactly come out and say Brandon Williams would redshirt. He did say that specifically about Devin Williams if he doesn't pack on the muscle and the weight needed to be a 6'11" big man in the Big Ten or just in college basketball in general. Brandon Williams could very well also be a redshirt. You could see both Williamses redshirting. Remember, not related, just both Devin and Brandon. Brandon last year, this is what he had. He played 552 minutes, shot 35% from the floor, 25% from 3, averaged 3 points a game, 2 rebounds a game, and some of his best games included a 13-point outing at Arizona State. Remember, that was the big comeback game when Arizona State had like 30 technicals, lost their mind, and restarted a UCLA run to success after the Utah debacle. So that was a big key moment when he found some minutes. And then for a while, from January 27th with the win at USC until basically the Pac-12 tournament, for the rest of the year, Brandon Williams was a starter, right? This is a guy that earned starting minutes. The second game of the year was playing 2 minutes. When they played Villanova, Brandon Williams had, in his previous 3 games, maybe 20 minutes combined between a 4-game stretch. Then after the Nova game against Ohio State, 17 minutes, started against CSUN, and then started consistently playing at least half the game while earning starting minutes and playing bulk minutes by the time the season came to an end, including 30 minutes against Oregon State with 6 points, couple of boards, and a couple of personal fouls, right? He was making his presence known in the game. Now with a guy that didn't put up spectacular shooting numbers, a 10-point per game player at Christ the King, Cronin noted he was the youngest player arguably in America and was starting for his team. In a college basketball era day and age where Your average start, Hunter Dickinson's basically a grandpa in college basketball. Most of these guys are old, 22, 23, when we're talking collegiate eligibility. Sometimes you'd see the joke of the old college football player that would come back, do pro baseball, right? The Brandon Whedons, the guys would be 26, 20, right? They'd be older. But now with NIL, the COVID era, you had a 17-year-old playing with 22, 23, 24-year-olds in some respects. And he was a guy that wasn't even an official adult when coming to UCLA. And Cronin made that known again and again. So maybe it wouldn't be the worst thing, considering Williams did not leave. Now, you still have to convince him to stay and play. And with so much more scoring, more physicality, more development and maturation, you wonder if he doesn't get enough playing time, you'll look towards the midway part of the season if Cronin and the staff can gamble and use a redshirt year on him and not just burn a year of eligibility. Now, I wonder if that would come at UCLA. I'm assuming there's going to be a guy transferring out after next year. I don't know who that is. There's no anger right now. Cronin, when he was talking on his interview, says everybody's happy. Everybody across the country is happy. Nobody's lost. Playing time hasn't become an issue. Well, it will be an issue this year for UCLA because there's so much talent, so much scoring, defense, athleticism. Guys who started, Brandon Williams, Stefanovic, Sebastian Mack, could all see their times where they played 25, 30-plus minutes in games all alongside of the court together, where they come off the bench together, barely getting maybe 10 minutes combined between the three of them. Now, that's an aggressive take. I know Mack would get more minutes. I know Stefanovic will get more minutes. But Brandon Williams could be one of those three guys that started a bulk of the UCLA games as a newcomer in the 23-24 team that is going to hurt, I'm pretty sure, for time. Bilodeau, right? You've got then Adai, who is going to struggle and try to burn minutes with William Kyle, and Eric Daly Jr. That's a guy in the same class, older than Brandon Williams, that provides more athleticism, more strength, more versatility, guarding 1 through 5. As a sophomore power forward, small ball 5, that can do a little bit more and stroke it better from 3 than Brandon Williams can. Now, I think a year of development can lead him into success in the future, because it's not often you get guys who play freshman year, start half the games, redshirt year 2, and then come back the next year. That's where the unusual predicament Mick Cronin is in this year. How to utilize his team, how to use it this year, how to keep everybody happy. Not that that's his primary concern, but you do have to recruit and re-recruit your players. And there are quite a few players that will leave after this year's team between eligibility, pros, and transferring out. And I do think Williams has a future. He does have a future at UCLA. He's just a very young player on a roster that's very talented, and he needs to earn some time. And I wouldn't be surprised if he finds a way to be more mobile, get a better shooting stroke, and be more consistent with it. But if you're not going to do any of those things, then you're going to lose the opportunity to play. And that's not just towards Brandon Williams himself. That is not a knock against him. That is, if you don't perform, if you turn it over, you will sit on this year's team and you might be buried on the bench for a long time. And I wonder if he's athletic enough to play in a full-time press defense scenario, or if UCLA, when they back off a press, can put him in defensively with a change of pace. All right. Now, I have high upside for the kid. I just wonder what that role looks like this year when everybody is going to be scrapping for playing time outside of Dalen Andrews. And then you've got Mick Cronin loving the hell out of Kobe Johnson's defense. Those are pretty much the only two starting roles I'm expecting 27 to 30 minutes out of every game between those two. The rest, it's going to be up for grabs. All right. So Brandon Williams could very well be a redshirt candidate this year, or he can surprise us all and earn time in a roster with more talent, more congestion as a younger player, still the youngest player in this roster, probably close to it with 2 incoming freshmen. That is where Brandon Williams is, more in along with the age of the freshmen coming in than he is with the Eric Daly Juniors and the sophomores transferring into UCLA. Because it's an old roster. Sky Clark's like 21, and he's a junior with another year of eligibility. Dominic Harris, that's an old, well-traveled veteran at this point who can score and shoot it from three when he eventually gets to UCLA. A lot of guys that are 22, 23, when you've got an 18-year-old trying to compete and get better. I'd expect possibly a red shirt. All right. Next, we're going to talk the likes of UCLA's new football coaches, strength and conditioning. DeShaun Foster might have old news for one and new news for another here on Locked On UCLA. Okay, so we get back to football. What are we talking about now with DeShaun Foster? He's still adding. Could it be the portal? No, this time we're talking the coaching staff. UCLA, 2 new additions. One that's a bit older news when it comes to reporting this in the pod, and maybe I probably talked about it, probably forgot about it. Might as well mention it again. UCLA's new strength coach, Corey Miller, returning back to the program. He was a big part of the speed and mobility program and conditioning that Chip Kelly implemented. And when we look at what Chip Kelly did and did not do, it was UCLA's fitness and conditioning and elite workout program that stood out from the rest. That is short to none, right? This is a team that was just out-conditioned, right? There's the old school days with Jim Mora and DeShaun Foster talked about it. They get brought out to San Bernardino, 100 billion degree heat in fall camp, really grind out some practices and come together as a team. Chip Kelly doing it a different way. He brought a way where it was elite conditioning and fitness. Didn't want to bring any knuckleheads. Didn't like the recruiting. Didn't want to deal with the hassles. He made sure you were fit enough to play, or he sometimes wouldn't even talk about you in the post-practice, pre-practice media reports. All right. So now you bring back in Corey Miller, which this is what DeShaun Foster had said. We had a transition of strength coaches. Keith Belton went to the Dallas Mavericks, and he brought Corey from the Carolina Panthers after a year away from UCLA, and he is transitioning back into being the Bruins strength coach. So that is huge for UCLA. So the big thing is they got a strength coach, and that was the one thing that was really good. Now, let's talk about the newer news for coaching, right? That's older news. This is newer news as of August 7th-ish. So I was reported Football Scoop. Also, the report for me, I've seen on 3, it is a new special assistant to DeShaun Foster, right? Maybe you've thought about watching The Office. Special assistant to the regional manager, yada, 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 right? Well, this isn't a joke. This is a real position. UCLA is bringing in Mike Babcock, another helper to the staff. So DeShaun Foster is utilizing his resources, right? This is not Foster who is like a tight ends coach, right? Where I forgot what his name is, but he went to Austin Peay to go be the head coach, right? Different coaches getting different opportunities in various places. He's not starting at the bottom with limited resources. DeShaun Foster, as much as UCLA has been bagged on for limited resources, a faraway stadium, they've got money and they've got opportunity. Now, it is a public UC school that's got to pay $10 million in alimony. They've got a deficit in the athletic department. But UCLA has a lot more resources than many other schools. And DeShaun Foster can hire a special assistant just because. And it's McKendree's former head coach, a Division II program, Mike Babcock, literally resigns prior to the season and then comes over to be a special assistant. That was days before their fall camp was going to start. A guy who took McKendree over a decade plus to their first D2 postseason bid in 23, first ever win over a ranked opponent when they beat the University of Indianapolis. And now he got a new opportunity, is going to be a special assistant to DeShaun Foster. So you can go pluck talent from everywhere. You think softball got a transfer. You see basketball taking talent. They're taking coaches. You can take someone's head coach days before the season is going to start and make them a special assistant and make sure everything's on track. I'm not exactly clear what the role is, but it's the opportunity to grow and grow and grow. So now what DeShaun Foster gets to do is add to his staff, add. And while the eye-popping additions included so much NFL coaching experience, so much extreme talent coaching-wise offensively with Eric Bieniemy as your offensive coordinator, an experienced defensive coordinator in Akika Malloy, and a good recruiter from his days at Washington, and coaches all around that have vast experience and a long time in ability of teaching the game. So as much as maybe the talent is there, maybe there is, or there will be in the future with much better recruiting efforts, maybe we're taken away and forgetting how much there is coaching-wise on this roster that can prepare UCLA in a Big Ten where they are very much overlooked, clearly overlooked. And that is what gives us hope in this year where UCLA's slowly stockpiling, building with the new energy, lots of guys returning, a better offense than they'll have in 23, and hopefully an underrated defense. It won't compare to 23's defense, but hopefully underrated in various aspects to compete this year in 24 and a team that travels 22,000+ miles in a new era in the Big Ten. All right. So Mike Babcock drops his former job, comes to UCLA as a new special assistant, DeShaun Foster. And then you've got Corey Miller, the new strength coach. That one, a bit of older news. All right. So get your hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.